Call to order this District of Clearwater regular council meeting for June the 3rd, Tuesday, 2025 at 2 p.m. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are fortunate to be gathered together on the unceded territory of the Simpcw people who have been caretakers of this land since time immemorial. There is one late item under 16.3, the Rural Community Development Grant Revision. Anything else that we want to add to the agenda? Councillor Sim.
One under new business, 16.4, calendar planning and council engagement, please.
Okay, 16.4, council calendar engagement. Okay, with the two items, can I get a mover and a seconder on that? Moved by Councillor Bratton, seconded by Councillor McKenzie. All those in favor? And that passes. Oh. All good? Okay. On item, well, that's adoption agenda. So anything under no conflict of interest or pecuniary interest that anybody would like to declare? If not, TNRD director is away today. Moving on to Mr. Crowell, come on down. 7.1, True Engineering, Capital Projects, Clearwater River Bridge, and whatever else you have today. Just see if that mic's working today. And then I guess you'll need a clicker as well.
Hello? Is that the clicker?
I'm not sure.
Do we have a clicker?
I think we do. Okay, do we have, I'm not seeing that mic working yet, but we'll give it a moment.
Lost in translation? I don't know. I'm going to blame Alcid. The rest of it come through properly? Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure, yeah. Go ahead, Mr. CEO.
Thank you. So, Council, I'm sure you're all aware of it. We had some audio feed issues at our last meeting. We actually lost the first 7 minutes of the audio feed. And our audio video system, we've got a really great system, and it works 100% most of the time. So it can be a little glitchy. Like I said in our last meeting, we lost 7 minutes of our meeting. If we end up losing audio or video feed during a meeting, we will of course try to get a re-establishment of that connection. But if we cannot re-establish the connection, the meeting goes on. We have to hold the meeting. And of course there's minutes available, which for all of our people who are long-standing council watchers, they'll realize that's always the actual official record anyways. So we apologize in advance for any issues. If they do occur, I'm not presuming that any are going to occur, but when they do occur, they occur. And it's not intentional. It's not trying to stifle anybody's speech. It's just a glitch that happens once in a while with technology. Thanks.
Does something appear? Does something appear when it's? That's fine. Yeah, no, that's, you can just scroll down as we go. Yeah. Well, I can grab this one. Okay, we can start. I don't really need the. Okay, so the intent here was to focus on a couple of active projects, but I also want to do a bit of a debrief on all kind of active projects that we're involved in. There's a lot on the go right now. I'm hoping this is less of a presentation, more of a bit of a Q&A. If anybody has thoughts, questions, input, just let's talk through it as we go, or wait till the end, whatever works for you. But yeah, we'll start by just going through some of the projects from. That's not going to work, Jenny. You can just scroll down to the next one if you don't mind. Active projects right now. So design of the 12-inch water main. That was something that we looked at in a preliminary fashion last year. Started on the detailed design with that. The design I've listed there, 90% complete. We put it forward, chatted through it with Chad and Shane and staff, picked a different highway crossing location to try and limit excavation and impact on the vacant, I think it's Pattison-owned parcel, for the connection through to Myrtle. So we're making that adjustment, but for the most part, the design is.
Sorry, can I just ask you to just go back, because we do have more people listening than normal, which is nice. And just to give some background, so we're talking about the Clearwater Valley Road water main.
Yeah.
And maybe getting the background of why this was chosen and why would that?
Yep,
be
sure.
all right?
That's good. That's a good point. So the background on this is it's a 3-phase project. It's a 12-inch supply line that goes from well 1 and 3 down here by the Clearwater River Bridge up to the Archibald Reservoir. The first 2 phases were previously completed. One was along Harby up to the Best Western. The second phase basically went from the Harby Highway intersection back to wells 1 and 3. That was done in 2020, I think. So the first 2 phases are done. The last section goes from basically the highway up to there's a stub in Windhaven subdivision. So the last section is all that we need to create a full 12-inch. Basically, it's not a dedicated supply line, but it significantly increases capacity of the water system. Right now, there's an 8-inch main that comes down Clearwater Valley Road that feeds the entire district. It's a bottleneck, and it's a super critical piece of infrastructure. If there's an issue with that main, there is no other way to get water other than Windhaven subdivision to the rest of the district from the Archibald Reservoir. So that was the background behind the need for the project. It increases fire flow as well as provides redundancy. We looked at whether it was better to go up Clearwater Valley Road or to go through greenfield development, kind of on the, I guess it would be the south side of the Best Western. So that alignment was chosen. We did a pros and cons analysis of the different options, and that alignment was selected. This is a project that's going to help the fire flow. It's in the DCCs. The idea here was get the design done so that if funding becomes available, we're essentially shovel ready. We can have the design done, permits in place, such as crossing the highway. There's land acquisition. There's things like that. So that's kind of the background on the need for the project and where it's at. And we're getting close to having it done, and we'll be able to apply for crossing permit from the ministry. As you can expect, those aren't all that quick, but yeah, no real hiccups in the design development so far, to report. Any questions on that one, Councillor Sim? Is that kind of good background, or is there?
Yeah, I think so. And I think what I'm hearing is that it's critical for water servicing for the whole community.
Whole community.
And that's
yes.
why it needed to be attended to. It's not necessarily for development, it's for servicing.
It's for both. It
good.
is for both. Definitely the developments throughout the community right now, fire flow is an issue.
Okay,
Fire flow capacity is an issue, and this significantly increases the fire flow in the various development kind of pods where it's being contemplated. That 8-inch main that comes down Clearwater Valley Road is a major constriction in the system.
So
This increases capacity.
I think I remember where this goes, but just for clarification, you're talking about, you have the Best Western Hotel. This is the highway. Best Western Hotel is here. Is it coming off this side of the Best Western Hotel and around the back side?
Like this side of the Best Western.
The front? The highway side or the back side of it? Or the
the south
I
side.
get really confused with north, south, west.
Let's
Clearwater
not
'cause
do
of the
that.
curve that
Let's
comes right
not
through
do
town.
this. I'm standing on the highway. I'm looking at the front door of the Best Western. Left side. Okay.
Left side.
Thank you.
Yes. Is that not south?
That it technically is, but because the highway turns
know.
where it does, south is not a good indication because people think they're still going north and they're actually, well, if they're coming up the highway, they actually stop going north in Blackpool and they've actually started to turn and start going
The
east.
amount of times I've discussed this on drawing reviews
Yeah.
is significant.
Let me tell you about town centers too.
Yes.
Anyways, you're gonna go up the left side
Yes.
of the Best Western property into the Harvey, just put the side of the Harvey cul-de-sac area, and then straight on through into.
Yeah, and trying to,
Woodhaven.
there's a large dip in there.
Okay.
And so staying on the high side of that, and then it's essentially a straight shot up the hill. It's
Okay.
greenfield, but it's essentially a straight shot
Okay.
up the hill, and then it ties into the Windhaven subdivision.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Okay. And that basically gives us what a 9.
Now, the highway crossing is.
So why is there need to be a highway crossing? Just to be clear on that, because where does this?
Because there's also, like, the capacity increases significantly over, like, along Myrtle and through there.
Okay, so it's coming across the highway into those subdivisions. It's
Correct.
not necessarily going down to well 1 and 3. That's another.
That's all done. No,
That's a
crosses the
set-
highway,
okay, okay.
basically parallels the south entrance into the Bilo and ties into the existing water main on Myrtle.
Okay. Okay.
And that secondary backbone that ties across the highway is
Yes.
important.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Next one, we'll go through the desludging for the wastewater treatment plant, cell 2. Prior to the project that was completed in 2019 to bring cell 1 online to convert it from an aerated lagoon to convert it to an aerated lagoon, cell 2 received unscreened sewage flow. Over time, that builds up as sludge within the aerated lagoon. As part of that project that was done in 2019, 2020, there was a sludge survey completed that determined there's a lot of sludge in cell 2. So last year, there was a contractor that came in and desludged. It's a kind of a specialized process. They come in and they desludge it, and right now it's sitting down at the wastewater plant in a giant rubber bag, essentially. It is. And it slowly dewaters over time. And the last step of the project is to dispose of that somewhat dried sludge. It's not easy to find a location for this. There's 2 options that we're considering right now. Like, one is Princeton. The other one, people try and reuse it if they can, if the like metals concentration and different testing that gets done on it will allow, they'll repurpose it for agricultural uses, I'll say. So right now we have one option, like that's where Kamloops takes theirs, for example. We're looking at other options to make sure that there's not something closer. we'll kind of sort through that here in the near future, like within the month, and then we'll be trying to move forward with getting that hauled out of there to put a bow on that project.
How much cubic meterage or volume do you think is there roughly?
It was like around 100 cubic meters.
Okay, that's a lot of dump truck loads.
I want to say I thought it was 12.
Okay.
So like, it's not like there's going to be trucks going down the highway for a month or something, but it's enough to matter.
It's enough that if you're taking it to Princeton, that's a lot of.
It is, and it's interesting, right? Like Princeton landfill knows they're the only ones who receive this, and there's contracts to do all that, and so we're trying to make sure that that's, you know, we're getting fair value, and that's the only real option. But nobody wants this stuff, obviously. It's of very little value. There must be issues associated with landfills receiving it, because most landfills won't.
Yeah. Councillor Bratton?
How safe is the rubber bag?
It's fine. This is
Okay.
normal. Some communities leave them for 10, 15 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't decompose.
No.
The stuff inside doesn't corrode it.
No, so it slowly dewaters. So it's actually somewhat perforated and it dries out, and the drier, the better. It's easier to haul, it's lighter, those types of things. There's kind of a sweet spot where it's like, okay, it's 80 or 90% dried out. You leave it for 5 more years, maybe it's 95% dry. But yeah, I've seen some communities where like it's been sitting for well over a decade. We'd like to avoid that.
And it's currently stored inside of our containment
It's in a
area.
contained,
Yeah.
yes. So there was a different, is that what you're gonna?
Yeah.
Yeah. There was another element to this project where a drying bed was actually constructed. It was partly to allow for this desludging to happen and have a safe area for it to dewater into, that can then, this effluent can be pumped back into the head of the plant. It'll also work to dry out the sludge that comes out of the red box down there as part of the SRS. So that was constructed 2 years ago, I think. So it's safe where it is, I guess, is for sure, to answer your question. We want to get rid of it because it's the right thing to do, and also to get that usable space back for the drying bed.
Councillor Frizzle, do you have a question? I thought you were raising your hand. Aaron, no? Okay, continue, sorry.
Okay, the DCC update. So we prepared draft rates. We've spoken about that a few months ago. We did a public engagement session with the general public in January. There was good discussion at that event, I would say. We also had one-on-one meetings with 3 developers in Clearwater about specifically the sewer, area-specific sewer DCC that was being contemplated for Park Drive. What we heard from all 3 developers was this isn't gonna work. It's too high, the timing is complicated, and so the feedback was this will impede development, which is frankly like the opposite of why you do DCCs. It's meant to not necessarily aid in development, but it's meant to make development fair, the cost of infrastructure fair to the developer and the existing population. But if it results in development no longer being feasible, then we took that as we gotta kind of circle the wagons and come up with a alternative solution. We've done that. We're looking at different options for funding that project. We're waiting on a legal opinion on a couple of things that we're contemplating on that end in terms of potential funding mechanisms. And we're also trying to make sure that the project as presented is the most feasible project and the one that'll work the best for all developers in the area. One of the developers has recently adjusted their layout, which also impacts the density that we're considering, the number of doors that would contribute to the lift station. So that has an impact on where we're at as well. We don't want to over-design or under-design anything. So unfortunately, it's a little bit of 2 steps forward, 1 step back here with this DCC bylaw update. It's something that frankly, we were hoping to have completed by this time, but we're continuing to work through that, that process right now.
So Herring, go ahead.
I'm just curious, like we saw in the most recent federal throne speech, them talking about basically having development costs charges for all multi-unit builds in Canada. So like the federal government sort of like reaching into the municipal authority there is interesting. What is our plan long-term for DCCs? If we're already looking at impacting our builds, we're having federal voices come into this conversation, we're having provincial government dictate our zoning preferences. Like it feels like we're charging these, but nobody's paying them because nobody's building. So my question is, when is it time to start looking at DCCs as, is this even a viable option for us in the future?
I guess my thoughts on that is there's multiple ways to pay for infrastructure projects. The idea is to come up with whatever solution is fair. And that's kind of the premise that we've looked at this through the whole way. It's a little bit restricted with what you can do with, Local Government Act and things like that. The idea of doing away with DCCs altogether, I don't know. I mean, they exist for a reason. Now, I know there's various municipalities right now looking at ways to tweak DCC best practices in terms of like time of collection and things like that to make it more fair on the developer. So I think there's different tweaks that could potentially be considered with the idea of DCC bylaws in general. But that, I guess, comes back to why we're looking at different options for funding that particular project. That's kind of a unique example. It is.
Okay, Mr. Johnson wants to.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the biggest constraint that we have for development in Clearwater is infrastructure. It's the lack of infrastructure going where it needs to be. So we need to figure out the infrastructure in order to really encourage broader development. DCCs are just a funding mechanism for infrastructure. So it's a funding mechanism that says, hey, it's not fair to charge your existing tax base the cost of all this infrastructure. Let's figure out how much of that infrastructure cost it's fair for to be paid by development, so to speak, so that you're not impacting your existing taxpayers. The province and the feds are talking more and more about, well, maybe there's alternate funding for infrastructure. And if they can come up with alternate funding that works for the timing that we need, that's great. We're all in on trying to find other sources of funds. But still, you get back to that fundamental, we need infrastructure, somebody's got to pay for it. And it's just a tool, that's all. There's nothing magical about DCCs. It's just a tool to help us fund infrastructure, that's all.
Councillor Frizzle, Councillor Bratton, and then back to Councillor Herring, sorry.
The developers are saying the DCCs are too high, but you also said that the timing is not right. What did you mean?
Sorry, say that again.
You said that they're saying the DCCs are too high and the timing's not right.
So specific to timing, I know Kamloops does it at time of building permit, and we were there. But Kamloops also has fairly large reserves.
The time of collection.
Oh, at the time of collection.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the time of collection, what was proposed in what was taken forward to the public was to adjust the time of collection to subdivision, not building permit.
Go ahead, Councillor Bratton.
So do we have a time frame? Is everything on hold completely? Or is there movement for these poor developers that are trying to get stuff done?
Yeah, so there is, and it was something that was going to come up later.
Oh, okay.
I did want to touch on that we did recently apply for a provincial grant. The CHIF grant, Canadian Housing Infrastructure Fund, I think it's called. It's a good guess. I don't know if it's right or not. It's a grant that's intended to assist in infrastructure needs that have a direct benefit to development. We put the hospital lift station forward as that project.
Okay.
It's 50-cent dollars. That went in March, I think. So I think further to Mr. Johnson's point is that there's different avenues to try and get funding. That's one of them. We'll see on how that turns out. But regardless of what happens with that is trying to understand if there's a different mechanism than the DCC. There's different ways there's latecomers, there's local service areas, there's DCCs, there's different funding mechanism to pay for infrastructure related to development. And the project is what it is. The need is what it is. It's a little bit complex that, like I said, one of the developments that would contribute to that, the layout has changed, and therefore the project has changed. So we're trying to move things forward while also kind of pivot to what the, developers are reacting to the market, and they need to be able to put something to market that's going to sell. You know what I mean? So at the same time, so we're trying to pivot on reacting to what the latest and greatest plans are. Well, at the end of the day, we have to get this across the goal line, right? So it's not that we're sitting here idle. There's a few different kind of irons in the fire on this one right now to try and move it forward in a way that's fair for everyone, including the existing residents.
Right.
Herring, follow up?
Yeah, just, I understand the basic fundamentals of why we collect DCCs. I think the issue I'm trying to raise is more of a philosophical one about where we're collecting them and this money from. So if we're collecting, it's this very small percentage of the infrastructure funding that we need is potentially covered by DCCs. So even if we collect maximum DCCs for a neighborhood, that doesn't even come close to covering the cost of the actual infrastructure required to service that neighborhood. So we're funding a small amount of it, but the remainder still has to be funded through grants, still has to be funded by taxpayers. They may not be local taxpayers, they may be provincial, they may be federal in some of these cases. But to me, by collecting from the developer, we're putting the brakes on the one aspect we can control, sort of thing. And then the other funding, we have to rely on the taxpayer anyways. The other side of this is we have some economic development opportunities coming with the mine that's potentially coming to the community. They will require housing when they arrive. So to me, as we open discussions with a potential community partner, it seems like there is a huge infrastructure need that we need locally that would benefit that development. So can we not work with them to fund a piece of this in the interest of getting that mine moving?
Yeah, that mine project is very complicated. The latest thing for BC Hydro is they won't be ready here for power for 10 plus years. So, yeah. Yeah, no, I hear you. It's not as simple as that. But yes, community benefits agreements have been done in the past, and that would be a conversation with TCECO. But until that mine drops its environmental assessment process, makes that formal, and then after that, the province of BC fast-tracking that to a 5-year approval process versus the current, which stands at above 10 years. Those two things, that sets a new likelihood that we can push things like this. Councillor Sim, look like you're ready to ask a question.
Yeah, just in follow-up of Councillor Herring, is you're absolutely right, it is a small drop in the bucket. And I'm wondering if there have been any analysis of what would happen is if we even brought in 50% of the proposed projects for development. And if they were built, and what that tax revenue would bring into the community. Because downstream, that tax revenue is actually going to have help offset all infrastructure projects. So to a certain degree, the District of Clearwater needs to grow. And I don't think anybody around this table wants to be our own version of BC Hydro and, you know, stopping things. So how do we approach the finances differently? And is that a case that can then be brought to the citizens? You mentioned that there was other mechanisms, you know, you've got your latecomer fees. Is there 1% service fees on taxation? Like, what are our other options? Because just to have no, it seems that we're strangling what we want to provide and bring in new people.
And I think it's a good question. These are all good questions. It's a good discussion to have, specific to Clearwater. And Clearwater with this Park Drive sewer project is a little bit unique. If the idea is, Councillor Sim, almost here, like, is there a way to share these costs over? There's going to be a net benefit to the community through, you know, general tax revenue and things like that, and it's held up with the idea of making sure the infrastructure cost isn't impeding that, you know, and so that we can get access into this whole general tax revenue. Is that kind of what you're saying?
It is. What would the project cost be, approximately?
So it was like 2.4 million, I think.
So I guess my other question is we've had a lot of projects in this community, and I don't know what we could build now for 2.4 million. So if we were to replace the Sportsplex, for example, you know, which is something that is subsidized every year, but it's got incredible value to the community. So what can we build that we're actually bringing in, you know, opportunity to grow our community? And maybe sometimes we look at a set building, but what if we're just looking at infrastructure? And that's another form of economic development. And we just have to shift our mindset.
And I think the way to do that potentially would be through like the assist factor, right? Like that's a way to shift the amount collected through DCCs more onto the amount collected through general tax revenue. Like that's exactly what the assist factor does, is it allows the community to contribute more into that project.
Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So along the lines of your question, Councillor Sim, about use of, like, where's the community benefit and how do we get these projects moving? One of the things that we're going to be bringing forward to council fairly shortly is, well, I shouldn't say fairly shortly, but this summertime is a financial guidelines and best practices. One of the items that keeps coming up is the use of debt to fund infrastructure. And in some ways, debt is a really good tool because you spread the cost of that over a 20-year period or less or more than that, but say 20 years, so that the benefiter really pays for that in the long run, right? So I know the district has been a bit averse to debt in the past, but I think it's something we need to look at, because with the infrastructure needs that we have, debt is one of the ways to accumulate cash, and it takes a lot of cash to develop new infrastructure, but it's one of the ways that we could do that, right? So that will be coming back to council for consideration this year.
I think that that's probably one of the greatest things, that we've got some other avenues. And again, I just hope that this table shifts its mindset about what can we build for the future, you know, that will be of value, and we will see, you know, continued contributions. And I think that our communities, for me, I see a lot of people really eager for it to grow and change and embrace some new dynamics. Thanks.
Continue. I guess I'm not seeing any questions on that, so, yeah.
Okay. Jenny, can you just go to the next? Next is Myrtle Roadworks. Anybody who drives to Bilo would appreciate the asphalt's not in great shape there.
Yeah.
This is a roads asphalt re project. There's no infrastructure, water, sewer stuff related to this. This is remove the existing asphalt, some of the gravels, and put some new gravels down and repave it. So this is just a roadworks job. The design's done. It hopefully goes to tender like this week, and it's something that's completed this summer. So
I'm assuming you're surveying, and I'll get to you in a second. I'm assuming you're surveying that corridor. It's my understanding that the district actually has a chunk of right-of-way there that's, do we not on the edge of that lot where the trees are on the corner of the Bilo property? Is that not ours? Like, I'm going to look at this map, and I'm going to go the top left square.
that heavier black line,
I'm going to go,
that's like a water line.
No.
Oh, over there.
Yeah. Where the, in
That's
front-
illegal. That's legal line.
Yeah, okay, so that's the legal property line that's
Yeah.
on there. Okay, so we don't, because at some point I was kind of told that we had a right of way in there, so that the possibility of doing a right-hand turn, extra right-hand turn lane in there. Okay, never mind.
Not that I'm aware of.
Go ahead, Council. No, that's fine. Don't need to get down that rabbit hole. Go ahead, Councillor Herring.
Are there likely to be any changes to the traffic signals at those intersections? Like what I'm wondering, there's that three-way coming out of the bylaw that I think tourists in particular find confusing, and then there's the intersection between the medical clinic, high school, and there. Are we going to be changing signage? We're going to be changing traffic flow at all?
No, this is just
Just roadway.
fixing the asphalt. That's all this is. It's not a traffic movement change. It's not an infrastructure like below ground. Chad and I, we looked at the infrastructure in there. Is this the right time? So we considered that. But no, this doesn't include signage changes or widening or anything like that. Like the curb all stays as is, for example, so.
Councillor Bratton.
What's our time frame for this to take? Like, is it like the 2 months or a month to do? Or July,
days, or-
September is the beginning of school, and that roundabout's going to get clogged in highway traffic. I'm just curious how that's all
busy time.
supposed to work.
Yeah,
Tricky
and I
situation in there.
wasn't sure if it's better to have traffic impacts during the summer, during
I
peak
know.
tourism, or
Yeah.
during like school. I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Tentative completion date was like September 15th.
Oh, okay.
Now that's that's lots of time. This isn't when they get started, whoever does this gets started. We could move it up to, September long weekend type thing. I don't think it's,
Better than another. I just was
yeah.
curious how that.
I wasn't even really thinking about the school. I was more worried this is a busy time during peak tourism, but there's never really a good time, right? With the school right there and the arena right there. And
How long is how long is this project going to take? It's like a day or a 2 day or?
no, it'll be like a few weeks, for
It'll
sure.
be a few weeks to actually
They have to
do-
remove all the asphalt.
Okay.
And then sub-X some of the gravels out, place a bunch of gravels, and then pave it.
Okay, so it's a fairly complicated thing, and one lane at a time. Is that generally how
The
you do
idea
it?
is that one lane of traffic needs to stay open.
Okay.
That's
Well,
what we've indicated in the tender. Now,
Yeah.
it's not like this is the only way in to Bilo. If when we look at a traffic control plan, that doesn't look like it's gonna make sense, or you're gonna be running traffic over gravels that were just placed and undermining quality, then if it has to get shut down for a few days, then that's something we'd look at.
Okay, so that's going to be a bit more complicated if that's the case.
Oh, no,
Okay.
the traffic issue is complicated.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, this is the fun of that Kamloops lives through pretty much every year down Lansdowne and all that sort of thing to Overlander Bridge every single year.
both bridges
Okay.
at once.
Well, hopefully we can get lots of public notice on that before that project starts, and then
Yeah, and
Yeah,
there's
I'm-
no
I'm
easy way to do it.
there
Like,
is no
really
easy way. Post tourism season completely after October 1st might actually be better, but that's just my thought, and I'm sure we're gonna have lots of once this is out there publicly. I'm sure we're gonna get lots of feedback.
I know, and we debated that too, but you run into freezing weather conditions and you start flirting with temperature and yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
That's something to think about. I'm sure we'll get more council questions from that in the future, and we'll have one right now, Council.
Yeah, actually, it seems like such a wonderful opportunity to speak to the owner of that corner piece of land and how that could be used as a diversion. And if there was paving to be done there, gosh, what a fun opportunity there,
But I see what you're saying.
right?
Yeah, do a quick off, temporary.
It would be interesting what maybe
Temporary
the
left-hand turn.
landowner might be
That's
interested in.
Pattison Group there, yeah. So
Yeah.
and you never know with them. So,
Anyway.
but yes, add it to the thought process.
So this will come back to council, obviously, and I think based on this discussion, a deeper dive on the actual plan for the traffic at that time, it probably makes sense. Because I'm sure there'll be lots of questions from the public.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Road condition assessment.
So, this is the idea, Tetra Tech is somebody that we went out to on this. This is a specialized thing. We don't, True doesn't do it. It's kind of a kitted up van that goes around and analyzes all the asphalt in the community. And from there, they prepare condition assessment on all of the district's roads. And from there, it'll really help Chad and staff put together a roads maintenance and asset maintenance program for the roads. As opposed to like, you know, that road's failing, that road has failed. You know what I mean? Like there's ways to get ahead of it. And so the idea is for Tetra Tech to do this analysis. We'll integrate it in with the district's GIS so that ideally you can overlay, you know, critical water over top of a failing road, over top of, you know, undersized sewer or an expiring sewer asset. And the idea is that this is kind of a key layer to the district's asset management planning. A big piece of it is roads. And we don't want to be going and redoing roads that has a water main under it that's failing. Mistakes happen, but if we have the information at our fingertips and a system like this allows us to integrate in with the GIS and do that type of kind of forward thinking capital planning. So that'll happen in June, I believe. So that's right away. Dutch Lake Corridor Study. This is something we started earlier in the spring. It is something that came through some discussions even last fall, I believe. And we went to the public in January and heard a range of feedback. A lot of comments from users, but also nearby residents. I know that was a big thing I heard from people that live near the boat launch, for example. What we want to do is come back with, based on what we heard, some schematic options. Before we go back to the public, I'd like to bring those back to council to review. Here's what we heard. Here's what we're thinking as potential solutions and improvements to the area. Discuss it with public and discuss with council, and then present that to the public. From there, by the end of the year, the idea would be to have a plan in place that would allow us to plan forward in the future in terms of what are the different pieces that need to happen and do them in a higher level look at it, not like piece by piece. So that one is ongoing, I would say.
Any questions on that? Gets a lot of interest. No, not seeing any questions. Keep going.
Okay, so the next one is the watercourse bylaw. This is a recommendation that came out of the stormwater management plan. If you recall, there is a number of water courses right now throughout the district that traverse private property. It's not uncommon with communities like Clearwater that don't have full urban standard everywhere and, you know, full pipe storm systems and things like that, with overland conveyance being the primary form of stormwater. This happens. So through the CEPF grant, we were able to apply and were successful for funding to create a watercourse bylaw that would allow the district to notify and protect those watercourses throughout the whole community on existing private property. It exists in a lot of other communities. It's a logical next step in the district's kind of ongoing improvement of the stormwater management, not just knowledge, but also having the documentation in place to manage it appropriately. This is something that we would like to kick off this fall. But I guess I'll take this time to say that a big piece of this is, like any other bylaw creation, is a public engagement. And there's been a few of these projects that we've talked through that involve public engagement, and it makes a lot of sense to try and overlay these various schedules on top of one another so that we're not trying to go to the public every 2 weeks with a different topic. There's the watercourse bylaw, there's Dutch Lake Corridor, there is the the OCP, there is water meters, there's a lot of different elements that should and will involve the public. And so we want to put together a bit of an overall schedule for public engagement so that we're getting best bang for our buck in terms of if people come because they're interested in the OCP, well, maybe they take a second to provide input or, educate themselves on the water course bylaw or vice versa. So that's just one thing to be aware of, is we're going to try and streamline the public engagement given how many of these projects are going to have a public engagement element to them. So it says here initiate fall 2025. I kind of think the driver for the public engagement may be the OCP, in which case whatever is going to be the driver for public engagement, I think we'll probably pivot some of these other project schedules around that so that we're doing a single public engagement, or not single, but like one stream of public engagement sessions. The grant is good till end of 2026. So there's some flexibility in the schedule on this, and it's 100% grant funded. The last one was the hospital lift station design. I kind of spoke about that a little bit earlier. There was budget set aside for that this year, but we need to work through some of the development pressures in that area before it makes a lot of sense to design a lift station. We need to hone in on the contributing flows. So that one currently, as of today, is on hold. That might not be the case in a month, but just that's where that one sits.
Questions on that?
Okay, next one. OCP update. This is a project I'll say that I'm super happy is moving forward. It's the current one's 2012. Council knows all about the OCP, and I think everyone is excited about this process getting off the ground and getting moving with that. So yeah, I believe that one's kind of been discussed probably at previous meetings at length. I don't think we need to go into that a lot, other than it's active. We're moving forward on that. There's a bit of a tentative schedule there. And I think a key piece in that is going to be the community engagement and visioning aspect to that. So looking forward to council's involvement in that as well as the public. So it's great. Next one is universal water metering. Everybody's favorite topic. So the district was successful in applying for and getting on a water metering pilot program. So historically, there hasn't been a lot of grant opportunities. We've discussed this before. There's not a lot of grant opportunities for water meters. For whatever reason, in the province's mind, they think that they are essentially a self-funding initiative for a municipality, and the payback is seen on offset in infrastructure costs. In this case, they came out with a grant program. They selected, I think it was 20 communities. Can't remember. I think it was 20 communities. Don't quote me on that. Around the province, small communities like Clearwater. There was, you see, there 90% cut in meters. Like, there was specific constraints tied to being eligible for it. But yeah, $2.4 million budget to put meters in all of the existing residential and commercial properties, all the serviced properties. So yeah, we'll be moving forward with that. The schedule's a little bit to be determined. The intent was there's nothing happening in terms of water meters being installed in 2025. There's a big public education element to this. There's creation of a bylaw or modification of the current bylaw. We need to be careful with how this is rolled out to the public and strategic and how that happens. And so the plan is to do that over 2025 and then be in a place to move forward with actual water meter installs next year. Any questions on the water metering?
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Bratton.
So what's the time frame if a house gets built, say at the end of this year? Does that, would that get in on the free water meter, or do they have to provide it themselves? What's our cutoff for those developers or builders? Because you say surface ready, whatever that means?
No, it's a good question because
Because I think there's a
we
few.
have I don't know. I don't know the process that you're right. Like somebody goes and builds a house tomorrow, they put a meter in, and then we're going to come back next year and put a free meter in their neighbor's house.
Yeah,
Right? And is
Yeah.
that fair to them? It's a little bit tricky in the type of the meter. Part of the grant is they had to be either AMI meters,
yeah,
which means like right now the district has meters that, you know, you drive around and you collect the data. These are, you don't drive around and collect them. They're essentially connected through like cell phone type usage. So what worries me is that they would put in the current specified meter. I don't know, I guess is
do
my
we have to
answer.
change our bylaw quickly?
Yeah, but it's less about like, it's not like there's a cost difference on the meters. It's their neighbors will be free. And the current bylaw, I believe, is that they pay for a meter,
Yeah,
right? So that's the issue. I think we should take that away as an action item and follow up on the right, now that we know that this is funded, what we do with some sort of residence that needs a meter between now and implementation of the meters. So I think I'll make a note of that and we can follow up on that. It's a good
and it
point.
wouldn't be a big deal, but they are significant cost to them. So there's, I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
I'd hate to see all these new homeowners put out the money. for no reason.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Or put the wrong meter in.
Or for the wrong meter,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. Further questions? Nope. Okay. Oh, go ahead, Councilor McKenzie.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Can you, for the public in attendance and for the viewers online, can you just explain the reasoning behind the water metering?
Yeah.
Why it would be,
So historically, the district's water usage is very high. Per capita usage is one of the highest in the province. We've gone to pretty significant lengths over, say, the last 10 years to determine, is it leakage? Is it consumption? Is it incorrect data? What is it? And I think that's probably why we were successful in the grant, is we were able to show that like we've been trying to figure this out for a long time. One of the factors is consumption. And so this will allow us to determine where the heavy users are, and sometimes they won't even know, right? So part of this is determine where the high usage is happening. There's some areas within the district that have really high water pressure, and there's likely a lot of water main leaks as well. This will help determine, is the leak on the city's main? Is it in the house? Is it taps being left on? Like, where do we think this usage is going? So it also comes down to water conservation too. It's a big push through what the province has been for a lot of years of trying to cut down on water consumption. Anything you read on water consumption, the big one's water meters. It's a lot of times, it's like I said, it's people don't even realize how much water they're using. So this will allow for that to happen.
can you explain how the pay structure would go with that? Like, for your watering bills, I mean, there's people that are conscientious about conserving their water.
Yeah.
And then you have their neighbor who washes their street in January, March, down
Sure.
through the summer. So how is that going to affect one that conserves and watches how they, their water usage, as opposed to someone that just free flow with it?
There's options on the metering or the rate structure if we want to go down a rate structure avenue. This is a discussion we have to have as a group of what do we want to do? Do we want to bill by usage? Do you want to have a base rate? Do you want to bill at all? Is this just an education piece? If you do want to bill, Kamloops, for example, there's a base rate. It's kind of like hydro. There's a base rate, and if you use more than the base rate, you kind of pay more per liter, for example. So there's different options. But this, as much as any project, is about like engaging the public on what are we doing, why, what's their benefit. So I don't know what we're going to do. Like I said, there's different options on this, and I think we need a fulsome discussion on pros and cons of the different options.
And for me, I think the biggest possible savings here is finding the leaks, because we don't have to build more water infrastructure. If council remembers, under DCCs, we actually removed an entire reservoir system because it cost so much money. But, you know, if we're throwing 250% of the water into the ground likely out there somewhere, which is a possibility with the, you know, until we know where the leaks are, we may not have to add more wells and more water sources, and in some neighborhoods, maybe not even potentially upsize pipes if we can find those leaks.
Yeah, water usage in Clearwater is super high. It's also a fire flow thing. Like when you calculate your fire flow, maximum day demand comes off the top. So as maximum day demand goes down, available fire flow goes up by the same amount. So it helps on a number of fronts. And I think I'd mentioned this at a previous council meeting. I believe in Kamloops, they put water meters in 15 years ago. They delayed a lot of their water infrastructure by like 15 years. They're now going back to projects that were slated to be constructed 15 years ago. That's how much water consumption was reduced, and therefore deferred these different like supply main reservoir capital projects. Yeah. So it's a good thing, but it's definitely one that we want to proceed with strategically.
Councillor Sim.
So I'm also hearing in that discussion is the fact that we as a council and community could also look at the various categories. So maybe it's residential, commercial, but also agriculture. Noting that, you know, perhaps there's a number of properties within the district that actually use our water for winter agriculture purposes, livestock, etc.
That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah, and that's where it's interesting, the cut-in meter. So a cut-in meter means it's one that you have to put in like your mechanical room of your house, as opposed to a pit meter. We had originally proposed an 80-20 split for a rural lot like you're talking about. It'd be a lot better to have that. They might have a kilometer long driveway or a 200 meter long driveway, and they might have a service to irrigate for livestock between the road and their house. A cut-in meter won't capture that usage or leakage. So that's where that 10%, that's the intent of that 10%, that, and frankly, like unruly residents that say you're not coming in no matter what. But that's, the idea is that type of resident that exactly what you're speaking about is larger rural / agricultural type uses.
And I think that there would probably be a higher willingness for partnership with that if there was also a philosophy of what it meant.
Yeah.
Right? So if
That's the education piece.
Well, but also the philosophy is the fact that the District of Clearwater embraces the fact that, you know, farm to table is real, and part of the farm is the water. And so what does that mean? So I think that'll be interesting to have that philosophy as it develops out as we go out to public. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
Good on the
You
water
have
meters?
all the time in the world. Keep going.
Sorry, I know this is dragging on.
No, this is important stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so the Clearwater River Bridge. I thought I would start with a bit of background on here. So Fraser Basin Council completed preliminary work back in 2019 and then did preliminary floodplain mapping in 2021. The district was successful through a CEPF grant to do detailed floodplain mapping in 2023. That was finalized last year, but the heavy lifting on the modeling was done in 2023. High flow event in as part of that floodplain mapping, they visited all the various different types of sites and actually flagged like, this doesn't look right. You can kind of see in the picture, and it's hard to tell there, it kind of all looks like rocks, but that bottom label is actually showing just exposed geotextile. That's not what you want to see. So they flagged this in 2023 and said, this riprap has failed. And it was put in the recommendation as part of the floodplain floodplain mapping project. In the spring of 2023, if you recall, the flows were really high. They were forecast at one point to reach greater than a 200-year flow. It was a little antsy there for a few days. Turns out it was around a 10-year flow. So as part of that, we did a more detailed assessment on, is this a emergency risk? If this gets to 200-year flows next week, what's going to happen? So we were able to do a bit of a deeper dive on this particular incident as part of that high water level. Thankfully, the flows didn't get there. No harm, no foul. As a follow-up through the CEPF grant fund, we were able to put in a submission to fund replacement of the riprap. That was successfully funded. And since kind of last fall, we've been working through that project from a pre-design perspective. And sorry, Jenna, can you go to the next slide? So that grant, the scope was basically reconstruction of the riprap. Cost estimate was done, relatively limited information available at the time, but this is what we came up with. This was submitted, it was funded, so this is kind of the pot of money that we're working from. I would say that our pre-design exercise, and Jenna, you can go to the next step. The pre-design exercise is something that True took on with assistance from some sub-consultant help. And a key element that was identified is a scour hole adjacent to the closest bridge pier. And it turns out, looking back, this had been previously flagged, but it was big enough that it raised some alarm bells. Not exactly what you want to see near a bridge. Perfect. Yeah, this is a typical failure mechanism that you'll see on these types of bridges.
How a scour hole is a large hole that shouldn't be there, and how is it generally created?
So it's interesting. It's just turbulence of water, and it just undercuts and undercuts, and you can
Caused by the bridge pilings?
no.
Okay.
In this case, and this is something I just learned last week, it was actually caused by the old bridge pilings. The old bridge pilings, and this is where I was hoping for a pointer, but they're basically, say, 30 meters north of, don't say north, upstream, 30 meters upstream of the
Okay.
existing bridge.
So
and
on this color chart, sort of where the green is there, and then you have a red line.
yeah, like the
Yeah,
top
that
red
makes
line,
sense.
there's two old bridge pilings from
Underwater that we can't generally
that we
see.
can't see.
Okay.
But the bathymetric survey picked them up. And it's like, oh, this makes sense. This is the old bridge. The back eddies and whatnot that generates, that's actually what is likely to have caused this. Because it's kind of like right beside the existing piers. And it's like, why? I'm not a hydrotechnical engineer, but I'm like that. Usually it's downstream, right? So that's the mechanism that caused this. So we went through the pre-design exercise, and just to touch on that real quick, we had a structural engineer analyze the bridge that said, is the bridge worth saving? Essentially, it's an existing asset the district has. It's worth preserving. It's not like this is a failed asset. There's maintenance issues, obviously, but they did a high-level review of the bridge utilizing as-built drawings, photos, site visit, that type of thing. We've engaged First Nation and done from an archaeological perspective, and I'll just say they've been great to deal with. 100% on board with trying to work with the district to rectify this. They have engaged, or maybe not engaged, they've delegated archaeology to Bridge Lake Archaeology, I think. So they've visited the site, they have submitted a permit to the province to do an assessment concurrent with the repairs. So the initial site visit is completed and a permit has been submitted to the ARC branch. We also engaged an environmental consultant. Anytime you're doing work in the water, near the water, you need a Section 11 application through Walrus, Waterlands Resource Stewardship, I think. So that ball is rolling, and we need to figure out exactly what's getting built before that can be finalized, but we've engaged with an environmental consultant and had preliminary meetings with staff from Walrus, explain the issue, explain what we think needs to happen, went through this whole scour hole exercise. So trying to get in front of the ministerial approvals that we're gonna need, whether it's archaeology, DFO, Walrus, that process is ongoing. We got to the point in the design where our internal drainage people, this scour hole was beyond their comfort level, I'll say. There is firms that specialize in this type of stuff. And so what we decided to do was to put out an RFP for hydrotechnical engineering services. We sent it out to 4 proponents, and yeah, you can go to the next slide. Yeah, we sent it out to 4 proponents. We heard back from WSP and Northwest Hydraulics. They were both, good submissions. There's a bit of a summary on the next page in terms of our scoring criteria, fee estimates. We recommend moving forward with Northwest Hydraulics. I'm confident either firm could have done the job. They both have these highly specialized staff. WSP kind of does everything, but this is all Northwest Hydraulics does, is this type of work. They also have a lot of history with the bridge, which I've realized since starting to work with them since this closed. They completed a evaluation on the bridge, and it's titled Scour Evaluation Report in 2016. The scour hole has been there. And you go back 2 slides, one more, keep going. Those are all the different bathymetric surveys that have been done. The most recent one is the orange line. But as you can see, the gray line, for example, that was done 2 years prior in 2022 doesn't look a lot different. The 2016 one that isn't shown on here because I didn't know it existed till Thursday looks pretty similar. So it's been there, and it's a problem that is been flagged. That's why this riprap is failing. So it's essentially falling down into the river is what's occurring here. So what we need to do now is engage a structural engineer to evaluate the bridge. And this is coming from the hydro-technical engineer. They have very specific questions that for them to do their scope, they need structural input to guide them. One of them is going to involve a geotechnical assessment to determine the remaining bearing capacity of those piles. Go back to that drawing there, Jenna. So those piles are about 100 feet long. And if this scour hole right now, these aren't real numbers, but say right now the piles are buried 50 feet. And when they were designed, maybe they were buried 60 feet. The scour hole has reduced the depth of bury on these existing piles. If those piles were relying just on skin friction, do they still have the required bearing capacity to support the bridge and the loading that the bridge is designed for? So there's a geotechnical element to this. The second structural question is, with the additional length of these piles exposed, is the risk of them buckling, like basically, yeah. that could be due to increased, like a sudden heavy load, or horizontal, like ice flow, hitting it from the side and causing it to buckle. So structural needs to comment on those two things. Depending on the response of those, the scour hole might get left as is. The analysis they're going to do is actually going to be based on a 200-year, where we think the scour hole goes to under a 200-year event. It'll lower itself. The scour hole will likely increase, become lower, more scour. That's the analysis they're going to look at this under. When they're done this assessment, that kind of has two facets to it. The hydrotechnical engineer then has the direction. They need to know what type of repair exactly needs to happen in here. So that's kind of where we sit as of today, is getting an answer on that. If structural says we're fine from a buckling and fine from a loading capacity, scour hole probably gets left as is, just armor the bank. If not, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Go ahead.
Just, I don't want to jump to conclusions or, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, that's why we have these specialized people involved.
Okay. Councilor Bratton, go ahead.
Why wouldn't you just fill the hole?
You'll just get another one.
But if you put the proper riprap in there, it'll behave properly. It's because the wrong riprap was
There's no riprap in the bottom.
in the bottom.
Yeah.
This,
So-
the hole has been dug in natural river rock.
Yeah, you can see here on the side, both sides, you can see like the bank was armored. The river bank used to be almost flat. So they armored the bank when they built the bridge.
Yeah.
It's scoured below. This was my thought too, like, I don't know, fill the hole. Like,
But I
we're
mean,
good.
if the other pilings are creating a situation where it's making it scour because it's going around it wrong, create another flow so that it stops doing that.
I
Stop
honestly,
doing that.
no, I know. And believe me, like the initial thought was like, fill the hole. Like,
Well, that's
this
like-
seems like the right solution. And, you know, the hydrotechnical engineer said, careful with that. Like, you'll chase your tail if you just go fill that. You'll
So,
likely chase your tail. So
okay, so now I do have a question that is a bit concerning. When do we find out the information? When are they coming to assess this?
So this assessment is, call it 2 months. In the meantime, and we're gonna wait for a recommendation from the structural engineer, like within the next couple days,
Yeah.
likely gonna put a restriction on the bridge.
Ooh, that's
Not that we necessarily have an issue, but we know stuff now that we didn't know a week ago or a month ago. Now that we know it, I think it's the right thing to do to put a load restriction on the bridge for heavy truck traffic and things like that until this assessment is done. I know that's not ideal for residents. I know it's not ideal for
well, it's the
Camp 2
loggers.
road businesses. There's Argo road maintenance. There's tour buses. I know it's not ideal, but a failed bridge isn't ideal either.
Well, no.
So just given what we now know, this is coming right from the structural engineer who's looking at it. It's a little bit unknown right now.
Fun.
Councilor Herring.
When it comes time to actually do the work in the water,
Yeah.
is there a time of year that needs to happen?
Yeah, there is, and it's a good point. So there's kind of a couple elements to it. One, low flow. So you'd like to get in there, like, say before the end of March, but you got to avoid the salmon run too. So you could theoretically go in like November, October, but the salmon. So you got to time it so you're minimizing ice, minimizing high flow, and minimizing impact on the salmon run. So there's kind of a few different elements to it. It's likely like a winter thing. Yeah. There,
Yeah. No.
so there's a tourism element too. And it won't be like now. You know what I mean? Like when does the rafting kind of tail off in the fall?
Oh, September, mid-September, yeah.
It won't be in that.
No.
The salmon are running it like too high.
Councillor Frizzle?
If you have to put restrictions on, vehicles will have to go around. What's the bridge like between the I don't know, the other bridge?
The Hall
The
Bridge?
logging bridge, I always call it, but I don't know if that,
Yeah,
like, would that be a
private
safe thing
property.
to do? Or is that, we're talking about going way out, coming up Blackpool Way?
I'll let Mr. Johnson tackle that because he's probably thought about it more than.
Thank you. So I have a little experience with bridge restrictions, and especially on semi-industrial roads like that from a previous position. But typically with bridge restrictions, it's got to be based on engineering advice, and that's from a bridge specialist engineering company. They do tend to be cautious and err on the side of safety, which I think was probably what our goals would be as well. And when they do come on, though, what they do is they try to do an analysis on what the acceptable weight is. So they're not necessarily saying it's going to be any big trucks can't be on the road. It would be what is the acceptable weight that they feel is still represents a low risk factor. So until we know what that is, it's kind of pointless talking about what kind of vehicles can go over or what vehicles will not go over. And through the process of the engineering, if as they develop more certainty, if they say, you know what, maybe we can up that limit, we would be amenable to that, right? So we're not trying to restrict traffic needlessly, and hopefully the weights they select, you still get 90% of your regular traffic would be able to go over, but it just depends on what that weight limit is.
Go ahead, Councillor Sim.
Will any parts of this project, once it gets started, be appropriate for local contractors to bid on?
Yeah, I don't see why, like, there's not going to be anything that would disqualify local contractors from bidding on it. There's likely going to be the work in the river. If it's what I think it's going to be, that's pretty specialized work. There's also, though, going to be riprap supply. There's going to be material
So
supply.
subcontracting would be an option. Or
And I'm not against it being one way or the other, but what we were thinking was an RFP so that you can balance experience in with price, in with, a number of different factors, not just price, right? But there's also like requests for quotations and stuff on riprap supply and things like that. And I'm hopeful, like any project, there's a local element to this.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. As long as there's a bit of a local lens built into it, it's always
Yeah.
nice. I mean, I think we all agree that we need to just expand the stools.
Yes.
Okay, Councillor McKenzie, go ahead.
Yeah, just curious, how does that go? Who would fit the bill for the analysis on that 2A bridge? Because it's kind of a gray area with everything, it seems
I
like.
believe it's
So
privately
does that come
owned
down
by
to
Interfor now. Is
Interfor?
a CAD4 asset, but staff would have to check
Are we
on
talking
that.
about the bridge? Like, I was thinking that if a truck is too large to go over the bridge, they're going like out to the highway.
Theoretically, yeah. If you're going southbound, you'd go Old North Thompson to Blackpool is one option, but also the 2A Hall Bridge, single lane, which I mean that's heavy load anyways. But we'd have to have a conversation with Canfor, well Interfor, I would assume, because I believe that's their private asset at this point,
Yeah.
or forestry. Well, I mean most of the trucks that would be heavy load anyways are already using it, so
Yeah.
that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah. Anyway, like it's an evolving project, I'll say, and it feels like the more we learn kind of week by week, the more we have a better understanding of what's going on. But it's definitely like evolving, and we were kind of talking before, like this is by far the district's most expensive asset. So we got to make sure that what happens in there has the right people involved, and it's done properly.
Okay, I think you're at the end of your presentation.
That's it. I think I'm done.
Okay. Well, thank you for
Budget
that.
summary, but yeah, we would like to, oh, yeah, that's it. There was some other stuff on there, but I think we're probably good. I was just gonna run through the different grant-funded projects, but we've talked about them all anyway, so I'm good.
Anything you want to highlight, go right ahead. But
Sure, you can skip to the last one, just so everyone's aware.
okay,
These are the different, the district's done a really good job recently of being successful on
oh right,
grants.
yes,
So the bridge, the OCP, the water metering, the water course bylaw, floodplain mapping, and stormwater plan. For a community like Clearwater, like these grant funding opportunities are critical. I bring this up to say like there's certain supporting documents that we need to make sure it's water conservation plans, asset management plans. Like there's these different things that all these grants need. We got to make sure that we're keeping those in line so that we can continue to be able to put the right packages forward for these types of things, because they're all really good projects for the district that frankly, like, probably can't afford them all if they're not funded. So that's it.
okay. Thank you for your hour and a bit. Time to get a glass of water. Okay, thank you for that. Moving on to item 8.1, minutes of the regular council meeting held May 20th. All right, any error or omissions? And if not, can I get a mover and a seconder on that? Moved by Councillor Bratton, seconded by Councillor Frizzle. All those in favor? And that passes. We move on to item 11.3, appointment of members to the Public Art Advisory Committee. I think we have maybe potentially an amendment to this or not. Hold on a second. Go ahead whenever you wish to.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe Alston's online. He wanted to talk to this one. Alston, are you there?
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Gonna try
Just
to
checking in.
bring up your volume. Hold on a second.
How's the audio?
Speak up.
Testing one. Testing two. Good gravy.
Can you hear us, Alston?
Yes, I can hear you guys just fine. Can you guys hear me at all?
Just barely. Like you're talking at the end of a tin can on a string.
Oh, lovely. Okay. I can't tell if that's on my side or.
Why don't we try and listen quietly or loudly?
Is this any better?
That's it.
Is this audio any better?
Is your volume up, Alcid? Just check for giggles.
Elsa, you just brought up the program audio. Go ahead and talk again.
Yeah, the audio test here.
Don't hear you very well.
Nothing at all. Okay. Testing. Okay, if Leanne's there, she should be able to speak. I did discuss this with Leanne. She should be able to update you guys everything I said.
Sorry, council. Wow. Testing. Okay, so given that we had some concerns, we brought out a backup plan. Leanne, this report's to you.
Okay, I am happy to answer any questions. I did watch the council meeting 2 weeks ago. So if there's any questions that want to be brought up now, I know that there was a few last week and a few more that came in this morning, but I am happy to do so.
Go ahead, Councillor Sim. I know you asked a few, and ask the same ones that you asked via email because they're important questions.
Yeah. So essentially, from what I understand, and there seems to be some differences in the report, it looks like we have 6 applicants, which is great. It's really nice, and such a diversity is really, really good. 3.5 of the terms of reference, it says minimum and 3 and maximum 7 members. So with the inclusion of a council member, which acts as the chair per 3.1, that would be a total of 7 members. So the staff reports 7 applicants, but only 6 are provided and included in the recommendation. The majority of the voting members of the committee would constitute a quorum for there. There was one option provided, and it was, we had 5 of the applicants and then 1 as a student voice. For me, I think that all 6 of them are worthy of applications as full members. This is just a committee of council, so having even or odd doesn't necessarily make sense to me because any decisions are going to come to the council table anyway. It's just a recommendation. The other thing is in here, it also cites that one of the members would be a staff member. Well, a staff member would never actually vote anyway, so I'm wondering if that would be an element that could also be changed. And just keep it really easy. So I do have option number 2 as a recommendation, but I don't know if, Leanne, if you wanted to make any comments on that or anything. I did love the idea of a youth voice. I thought that was a really important thing. I just feel for this particular slate of applicants, they all are adults to me. And I think that that's something that I think that this committee could widen out for come fall and touching base with CSS.
Okay. I see Mr. Johnson, and go ahead, Leanne and Sculp, if you wish.
Thank you, Councillor Sim. Yes, those are all really good points, and I'm absolutely open to adjusting the terms of reference too, if that is what council wants to do. A little bit of background though, when we were going through the applications, we had a late application handed in by Elizabeth Shook, and given that her background and expertise, we really did want to provide her a space on the committee. So going by the terms of reference and having to only pick 5, that's where we thought, okay, well, if we include her in the 5 and then also create a youth liaison, we could keep that youth in as well. But if council wants to, as you said, adjust the terms of reference so that we have 6 instead of 5, that's absolutely an option as well.
Yeah, for me, it's just going very simply to 3.5, minimum 3 and maximum 7 members, in which this would fall under it.
No objections. I think it's it's a consensus-based thing anyway. So
Yeah.
It totally is consensus, yeah.
I'd like to,
Councillor Herring, did you have a thought, or I see fingers starting to go like this? Go ahead, Councillor Bratton.
I'd like to support that thought. And just a note, the LCID's audio is able to hear online, so it must be in our chambers. I don't know.
So with that, I did write out a bit of an option 2, but I'm going to need the experience of staff to know where I've overstepped. Not unusual. So, well, it's true.
I'll let Mr. Johnson probably tackle that one if you want to.
So I would follow the first 2 versions that council appoints, insert councillor to the Public Art Advisory Committee and designates them as chair. I would support, and that council appoints Leanne Culp, Recreation, Culture and Events Coordinator, as the staff liaison. And then point 3 is maybe where I would stray outside my lines. So are you ready for that one?
Sorry, was there a question in there? I was actually reading your recommendation.
Oh, good. Okay, so is that fine? Is that recommendation matched so I can read it out, or do you want to address anything in there?
No, and I think staff will take direction from council. If
Okay.
council wants to have that bigger committee, we'll change the terms of reference and bring those back. I think we should go ahead with the formation even before we bring that back, formal back terms of reference, do it a bit concurrently. We've been waiting for a long time to establish this, so let's get it rolling, right? And I think from the staff perspective, we're fine with making those changes.
Okay. So with that, do they need to be voted on separately? I think last time we did need to do that.
Given that there's a bunch of and that's, I think it could be voted as one.
It can be as one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's look at one to me.
So last time we had said, was everybody here last time? I think the discussion that we had was the counselor who was going to join that. We all still fine with that? Okay, great. So option 2 is, I'm going to make the recommendation that council appoint Shelley Sim to the Public Art Advisory Committee and designates them as chair. And that council appoints Leanne Culp, Recreation, Culture and Events Coordinator, as the staff liaison to the Public Art Advisory Committee. And that council amends 3.63 of the terms of reference to up to 6 representatives of the community at large. And that council pursues future inclusion of a non-voting youth liaison to the Public Art Advisory Committee. How do we do?
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. So the appointment of a counselor to it, that counselor is as per the public, but there was a discussion last time about whether there should be another counselor appointed as an alternate chair on this. But the discussion that also, in answer to that, was that for the alternate chair was supposed to be selected from within the committee itself, I believe.
Yeah.
So what you just read was to have the youth liaison as a non-voting on this one?
No, is that it would be, pursues the future inclusion. So
Future accused, okay,
right now,
okay.
it would be all 6 voted.
Yeah.
Because we would amend the terms of reference, so it would be the 6 members.
Okay.
And then at a future, we have a youth liaison, but not right now. They would all be voting.
Okay. Okay. So are you moving that?
I am.
Do I have a seconder on that? Okay, seconded by Councilor McKenzie. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor? Looks good to me. Thank you. I'm not going to do anything for Mayor's report today. I'll move on to Councilor Bratton.
Sorry, I'll redo that. Our volunteer groups down at the ball field, they're doing really good this year. They're expanding and enlarging the whole group, so that's fun to see, having some tournaments coming up, and it's exciting to watch. YCS Food Security, they have a growers collective. I just saw this come up on the Facebook there, and I just wanted to bring attention to it, that they have a growers collective and a community food table at the Clearwaters Farmers Market. If you have produce to sell but can't attend market yourself, you can join the collective and they will sell it for you. It's open to backyard growers, egg producers, and market gardeners in the North Thompson. Contact Joanna Hurst for more information. They do some fantastic initiatives, and if you're interested at all, head down to the farmers market every Saturday, and also the community market, Clearwater Community Market, is that what it's called? At the Elks, and that's also in lieu with the pancake breakfast, and it's fantastic. And I just would like to bring commemorate, this is June and it marks Pride Month, and I just wanted to say pride is not just a flag, it's a deeply human reminder that every person deserves dignity, respect, and the freedom to be who they are without fear. Celebrating Pride is about people and making sure every person knows they belong here. They are seen and their stories matter. Let's ensure our actions reflect our dignity and equality, not just in June, but all year long. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councillor Frizzle.
Thank you. I attended the May 27th Tourism Wells Gray meeting. I'm happy to report that the Pahat Falls platform is completed 2 weeks early and is open and being well used from what I hear. The Visitor Information Center is going strong with lots of changes. Crystal, their new manager, has implemented new programs and finding ways to encourage more visitors, offering incentives to staff to encourage them to engage more with visitors and helping them booking activities and encouraging longer visits. So I think everybody's very excited about the upcoming year and they're expecting a lot more visitors. There's going to be more information about what happened at that meeting, but I'm going to leave that to staff. They'll be bringing something up there. And I just wanted to say this is my last meeting with Tourism Wells Gray, and Councillor Bratt will now be taking will be the new representative for them starting in June, the end of this month. I also wanted to mention that June 1st to 7th is Seniors Week, and it is a time to celebrate, recognize, and honor seniors throughout BC and our community. In Clearwater, we're very lucky to have a seniors complex that houses over 70 seniors, and we have many active seniors in our community, from bikers and hikers, and Councillor Matheson, who's not here because he's been kayaking and taking first aid courses and just having his best life, I think. However, there are many that are struggling financially, health, and loneliness. There's a myriad of reasons why they're struggling. So I'd like to encourage everybody to take a look around their neighborhood and see if there's somebody that looks like they could just have a chat and maybe go out for coffee and just have an invitation. Go over and mow the lawn. Something to recognize and remind them that they're part of our community. So yeah, that's what I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Herring.
Not much to update for me. Just wanted to say it's great to see all the kids out there. It's bike week, so everybody is biking to and from school. You see kids out on their bikes all over town, so watch out for them, motorists. That's all I got.
Thank you. Councillor Herring.
Mackenzie.
Oh, sorry, Mackenzie.
Thank you, Mayor Blackwell.
I just got over like 5 days of the flu, okay? Go ahead, Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Mayor Blackwell. Nothing to report for me at this time.
And Councillor Matheson, as someone mentioned, is away. Should be back in town tomorrow. Councillor Sim.
Nothing much, just thanks to staff for communicating out to the public about tax notices and how to be prepared for that. And also for the action and engagement about looking into the inquiry about the Clearwater River Road. That was just great information and lots of coordinated correspondence. So thank you very much for that.
To find out that BC Parks was actually had a plan to take care of it after all that, before we probably even knew about it. So thank you. And we'll move on to CAO report, Weyerhaeuser Dog Park and Bike Park. I am getting stopped anywhere I go to talk about this one. So it's great to see that this is going out to the public for the official consultation. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it's attached. Council has actually seen this before, but it's attached just to try to get a bit more exposure to the council process. I will say that as far as the going around and passing them out door to door, if you look at the actual picture on page 48 of 74, which shows an outline of where we think the park could look like, the front row of houses, there's 17 houses there, what are bounding the park. Those all had hand delivered, this same package hand delivered to them with an actual mail-in form that they could use. We had initially thought about a larger area, but with the uncertainty of the mail strike and being able to get it out there, it was challenging. The intent is to have a public meeting on June 25th. And what we want to do at that public meeting is to have that right down at the park. And we're actually talking about taping out the areas we thought, or delineating them somehow with flags or taping them out, so people will get a sense of where these things would actually be if they were happening. And then to have an open house style meeting down there where we set up some boards and gather input and bring all of that information back to council. And I think probably an important part to highlight on this is that we're reporting back to council based on any survey results, based on any other informal communications we get, but also based on the results of our open house that we're going to do with this. That report back to council is for you guys to make a decision. Is it a go or a no-go? And the go decision would just be essentially go ahead and do detailed design, figure out the cost estimates, do your diligence around that, figure out what the annual operating cost impact will be. These things, anytime you increase your amenities, you do increase your annual costs. So it's important for you to have the full information. So I guess to summarize, we bring a report back to council on engagement. Council makes a preliminary decision, and then if they say yes, do the costing, then we'll bring that full cost report back to council, and then council can make a fully informed decision about which direction they want to go on one or either, or possibly neither of these proposals. There's no decision yet being made about that. And I think that question has come up a little bit, has council already made the decision? And the answer is no. So we're open to any questions you may have on it, and that's it. Thank you.
Comments or questions for staff? Councillor Sim, go ahead.
There's certainly been a lot of enthusiasm for it, but there's also been people who have said, has this fill in the blank spot been considered? So in that engagement process, is there a room for and or is it just an either or? What are the thoughts around that?
Thank you, Councillor. I think that will depend on what the level of response we get back. If we get an overwhelming response, potentially people could say, we love the idea of this, we just don't like the location. That may drive that conversation. As you know, this location actually has quite a few benefits, being that it's already got an established parking area, it's already got water to the area, and you start to put amenities together and they become more cost effective to maintain, as well as it's got great access from the Highway 5. So if people are driving by and they want to stop at, let the kids out of the car, let the dogs out of the car. It's got a lot of potential for being a great spot, but there are other options to consider, although the amount of those options are a little bit limited, but there is other ones. Council, as you recall on the dog park question, I think there was 4 different areas you looked at initially. So if that was the response on one or either of these, we could look at other spots. It just depends on what the response that we're getting.
Yeah, and I think that the conversation kind of drives from, one is dog parks can be a really great social gathering, but the second one that we often hear about is, where do I bring my dog to cool down in the summer, and whether or not this area would address that question. It could be separate, but just bringing that into the scope of the conversation that's out there in the community. Thank you.
Hey, any other comments or questions? See none? Yeah, I know. I think that there's going to be a good discussion of this. We may end up with more than one thing out of this. Noting, I think one of the staff reports Mr. Prime came up with said that there's 4 or 5 formalized dog parks in Kamloops, but there's also another 20 that are open to dogs and are used by dogs. And one of the ones that keeps coming up here is, a dog beach, and that's not an easy thing to provide, especially on a lake. But, I'm sure that will come up as part of the conversation. So, thank the staff for the work on this, and I look forward to seeing what the public has to say on this. So, all good. We'll see what comes of it. Moving on to item 16.1, capital projects. There is a staff report on this one, and it's related to the True presentation. So I'll let staff speak to that. Mr. Carmichael, is this one yours?
Hello, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so it's fairly straightforward. It was True completed an RFP for the Northwest Hydraulics, so it's just awarding that contract and then awarding True for the water meter project.
We'll start with recommendation 1 there. Recommendation 1 is the council award the Clearwater River Bridge Erosion Project detailed hydraulic design to Northwest Hydraulics at a cost of $125,000, and that the mayor and chief administrative officer are hereby authorized to execute the necessary documents. Any questions of staff on this one? If not, can I get a mover and a seconder on that? Moved by Councillor Frizzle, seconded by Councillor McKenzie. Further discussion? If not, All those in favor on that one. Moving on to recommendation 2, that council approves the direct award of the water meter pilot project in the amount of $150,000 to True Consulting to be completed no later than May 6, 2027, and that mayor and chief executive or administrative officer are hereby authorized to execute the necessary documents. Any questions of staff on this one? Councilor Sim?
Yes, I wondered if you could give me the definition of when we do a direct award, and do we have a threshold within the District of Clearwater? Does it just go to engineers being the District of Clearwater engineers of record? How does this work?
Sim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And to you, Councillor, that's actually kind of a bit of a 2 or 3 part answer to it. With regards to the ability to direct award, for water, our ability to direct award is regulated by the province under various agreements, and what their intent, of course, is to create a level playing field for everyone. Specifically excluded from that, it's specific exclusion under the new S partnership agreement, is language around water projects. So water projects do not require going out for competitive bids. And the rationale behind water projects is because for water projects in particular, local knowledge is really critical. So the local knowledge from that an engineering firm brings, who you use as your regular engineering for water projects, is critical to A, to develop projects, but B, to see them through, right? So specifically exempted. So are we breaking the rules by direct awarding this? No. In fact, it's kind of anticipated by saying that they're excluded from that direct award. The question around engineer of record, that's a great question, and it's a bit of a mixed process if you look at municipalities through the province. Some municipalities go out and they will do a tender on, very often it's a 5-year basis, and they'll say, okay, every 5 years we're going to tender our general engineering type services. And what that means is, if you have an engineer and you call them up, you got a little project and you get them in, or a big project, and you need to get your engineers involved quick to try to develop parameters for our project, or do inspections on our project, or just help you out with technical questions, then you would use an engineer of record. So some municipalities go out with that. I would say the municipalities I'm familiar with, I'm guessing probably, well, it's a good number, I won't venture a number, I would say probably half or more develop a relationship with an engineering company, but they don't actually go through and format the engineer of record. And it's the same thing that municipalities do with legal firms. We typically, municipalities, some will go through and they'll tender the process out, but others, you don't do that. You end up going to kind of an informal relationship with the engineers you're comfortable with, or the lawyers, your legal firm you're comfortable with, and you keep using them as long as you're comfortable. The interesting part of not going out to an engineer of record a proposal is that if you get to the point where you're not comfortable with that engineer, you can change the horse you're riding on, right? So that is one of the options, or that's one of the flexibilities it gives you by not having an engineer of record. But for all that, Chad and I have actually talked about whether this fall we need to put together a bid process and kind of consider that engineer of record. The downside is you need an engineer who's relatively local, so that they can come up when you have a council presentation, come and give you an hour of their time or whatever. And the concern would be if it's an engineering firm from somewhere back east or somewhere too far away, you end up doing so much electronically that it's quite challenging. So there's a lot of things to weigh in that. We likely enough will go for an engineer record. In some ways, it's the cleanest from a procurement perspective. At that point, you get a chance. They sharpen their pencils. They bid on the actual rates that they're going to charge you, and you as well define, here's the type of work we're going to give you. Doesn't mean you can't go outside for work, but you just define the type of work you would give the engineer versus the type that you would still look outside for. So, sorry, I don't know if that cleared it up. or
No,
made
that
it
was a
more
really great explanation. And I guess what I was wondering about is if the district has got any policy about what the dollar amount is that it would trigger going out for a request for proposal. I really like the explanation about the water, and you are talking about reviewing things in the fall. But do we have a policy about a dollar amount to go out for a request for proposal?
Typically, yes, we typically try to follow the various trade agreements, which would be $75,000 for services, $200,000 for construction projects. So that's the rules that we all fall under. In this case, there's an exemption, right? But that's the rules that govern in BC for municipalities.
Thank you. Well, I've learned something.
Yeah, no.
So
yeah,
thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you for that, for the research on that. Yeah, it's good. Okay, so we do have a recommendation if there's no more questions.
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Sim. Moved by, seconded by Councillor Frizzle. All those in favor, and that passes. And then a fun one, item 16.2, 2025 UBCM Community Excellence Award application. There is a recommendation here, and I'm sure staff will speak to this a little bit.
Mr. Mayor, this is such a great application. I was going to read it word for word because it's
Cool, I'll go get a order pizza.
So this application is for the UBCM Community Excellence Awards. And we thought the most innovative thing that council and the district has pursued this year has been the establishment of we're calling it the Integrated Wildfire Safety Services. So, the Clearwater Wildfire Safety Integration Initiative. That's the formal title on this one. And what we're talking about is where we're doing the wildfire mitigation with a crew of paid temporary employees, and that is with supplement from the province with the grant that they gave us. And then that crew of people is out there doing the mitigation work, which in the long run reduces our exposure to wildfire and is good for assisting with critical infrastructure protection, good for assisting with vulnerable populations, protecting their houses and whatnot. The second phase of this is the what we call our FDIA crew, the Fire Department Initial Attack Crew, and that's a manned up incremental resources, so incremental 6 firefighters, incremental apparatus, and being able to respond quickly, and that's due to the removal of the BC Wildfire Services initial attack team from the Clearwater area. We feel that those two together represent a bit of a change that other municipalities may want to consider or may already have considered, but we think it's pretty new to have that kind of that full service where it's mitigation plus initial attack plus incremental resources. So we put that in for this grant under the community excellence stream, or excellence in community, or excellence in service delivery. There's a lot of verbiage in there what explains why we think it's a for sure winner on this grant. And we need if council agrees with that, agrees with the submission, then we would need a council resolution. And that is attached to the face page of the agenda, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. I think you keep citing the word grant, but you're talking award.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just clarify that for the audience. We're not going for money here. We're going for glory. So, any questions on this one? I'm getting a fair amount of interest, even from larger municipalities that say, hey, tell me more about this. And I'm just quite sure that staff will at their conferences, they attend things like that. So it'll be interesting to see the reaction at UBCM on this one. So questions, comments, mover, seconder? Councillor Sim.
I guess my question is I noticed the deadline for the application and I noticed the written submission for it. And I'm just wondering, it's a strong proposal, and it's certainly innovative. I'm just wondering how come it didn't come to council last time, just for some contemplation. As you know, I was quite keen on our financial department being recognized for Questica. So, although not as sexy as new fire trucks, but I'm just going to put a plug in for our finance department there. So I was just curious, I feel we missed an opportunity to have a conversation about other opportunities too. And I'm just wondering how come.
Thank you, and that is noted. So next time we bring one of these applications forward, we can have that conversation with council, and we can talk about all the great things we're doing, including Questica, which truly is fabulous.
Thank you.
No,
I
agree on
think
that.
for me, my only concern is that, it is new terrain, and by being identified as a community, we're kind of setting a standard of stretching outside what's been traditional for municipalities. And what does that mean for other municipalities who maybe didn't have the resources that we did, and setting that standard and opening ourselves up as a province for potential downloading in this realm. That's just my wonder and my curiosity. So just sharing that.
Yeah, and I agree with that point about the potential for downloading. I just don't think the province, in this case, has given us much choice on this, and I think this pushes it, especially if it wins a prize, sure pushes the spotlight back on the province to respond accordingly and to return our initial attack crews to Clearwater.
And I hope that that's a good one, and I hope that that's a discussion vein that council can take up, is that it is a point of advocacy, and the fact that this has to be put forward as a potential, shining star, gold medal, really, application, and what it means. But I have some concerns about what it means as a province. So.
There is a very long recommendation here. Does somebody wish to move and second it? Thank you. Seconder?
Second that.
Okay. Further discussion? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Sim.
In the spirit of diversity, I will vote against it, but I am super eager to see everybody stand on stage for it. Thanks.
Okay.
Can I just say,
Yeah, Councillor Frizzle.
I understand your concerns totally, Councillor Sim, but my thing is, we have to be sure that we're safe, and that's why we're doing it. And maybe that's what we need to enforce, that we're doing it to keep ourselves safe, but it's the province that should be helping us.
And I agree, but we also haven't gone through the whole season, so I'm not sure where we stand in terms of, meeting deliverables. And I would have been hands up, all in favor, having gone through an entire year, and having some input on it and some different things. But this is just one solo voice at the corner here. That's it.
No. Okay, thank you. Further questions or discussion? If not, all those in favor? Okay, opposed? Okay, noted. Councillor Sim, noted. Okay, we are on the last page. 16.3 Rural Community Development Fund grants. This is, I believe, an existing grant that we have received permission to change. That's correct, Mr. Johnson? This is the on-table report. Ms. Campbell, are you speaking to this one? And
Yes,
your
I'll speak
name's
to
on
this
here.
one.
Sorry.
So the District of Clearwater received a grant in March of 2020 for $170,000, which was with regards to the Rural Community Development Grant to support the economic development and recovery after COVID-19, as the mill had closed and there was some broader impacts to the community. During this time, this grant had been administered by the previous Economic Development Officer and CAO, previous CAO. So the scope that this grant started out with was to do with impact assessments, existing economic development strategies, and transitioning the community after the mill closure, as well as developing the cellular infrastructure strategy and the broadband. Now, we were also asked to provide capacity for implementing these strategies and other recovery efforts that went down that line to assess the socioeconomic impact And after that was done, the grant wasn't completed as the economic development officer had left. The staff had identified the grant needing to be completed, but things had kind of changed over the years. So we had looked at other options for changing the grant. Staff had requested a change before, and we were denied. So we put in another request as we were instructed from the program advisor to consider something different. So we looked at economic development and wayfinding signage and other tourism supports for their community. And this is where we came up with some other ideas to provide map signage, trail signage, as well as community map guides. The grant itself was $170,000, and the contribution for the district here would be $34,000. But 25% of that, we've been told, could be used towards project administration and salaries, which then changes the amount that we would have to be asking for to be used from the district unrestricted surplus, which is $25,500. So we're asking for council to consider the scope change that we've requested and to move forward with the grant and the project the way that we have been approved to, if council would like to see that move forward. So we're asking for council to approve our scope change and also allow us to amend our budget to account for the portion that we will have to put up as well.
Thank you. Noting that this came on table and you all haven't really had a chance to go through this, I'll give you a half second to do that. But if you have any questions that come up right away, please raise your hands and go ahead, Councillor Sim.
So I'm not sure if, so this change in scope is relating to this map that's on table.
That's correct.
So it's to help pay for this map or to amend this map for the future?
That will be to pay for new maps. So there would be up to 40,000 maps. That map itself would also be put onto large print for signage at each one of our parks in town, as well as the maps being distributed at the various parks. Other businesses will have the option to have these throughout the community so that we're able to support Tourism Wells Grey as well as the wayfinding, just making it easier for our visitors to get around the community. There is a part on that map as well that shows the community map, not just Tourism Wells Grey.
So I'm wondering in your contemplation for that, is that with 37 East, once it's fully developed, is it's been talked about as having that as the trailhead to the river trail? Would that be something that's factored into this to assist with it, to avoid, sort of that heavy visitation into the neighborhood there?
Yes, that has been considered with this grant, that there would be a main sign at 37 East with the same map and information. And then also there will be additional signage that we have indicated would be needed to direct people to that river trail all the way from Dutch Lake Beach, all the way through the subdivision area and right to the trailhead.
Okay, that sounds great. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? I love this map. I mean, I kind of fell in love with these large scale maps, but this one's quite exceptional. I think it's one of those things that will attract people as a sort of a tourism, it's makes them think about their things and put it at the kitchen table and plan out what they want to do around here. And it's great that they have the District of Clearwater map on the back there, so people can see that we actually have that lake in the middle of town, because so many people miss that. We as not as tourists, sometimes pretend to be tourists in our hometown and see how hard it is to get around here, to all the things we take for granted that we know where they are. Think of it in terms of a tourist who has no idea where a lot of these things are, and that's why wayfinding and maps like this are such a good idea. So there are two recommendations there. If there's no further questions, go ahead, Councillor Bratton.
Would this include, hello, am I there? Okay. I sound very quiet. I'm not normally quiet. Oh, there we go. Now I can hear it. So some discussion as Councillor Herring was bringing up the biking path and all of that. we were discussing how difficult it is to figure out the trail system we have currently. Does this include signage so that we're able to, as it currently stands, be able to help people along their journey, where it goes, where it stops, starts, all that, how it continues through? Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely. Thanks for your question. Yep, it is definitely something that is being considered with all of the signage, that we will be directing people along those walking paths, as well as to some of the main sites and parks throughout Clearwater.
Perfect.
Councillor Herring.
Just a comment. I think the map is great. I think part of what the original grant was intended to do, to me, when I hear rural community development, development is a key word in there, and economic is not necessarily in that title. It is one type of development. I worry that, you know, the investment of this amount of money into a community map, I don't see the payoff in the same way, for example, developing broadband cellular infrastructure or completing socioeconomic impact assessments on our economic transition post-logging. Those, to me, made sense. This, to me, I don't see the cost-benefit analysis. It's just on a personal level. I'm not sure that having a new map is going to change the economic picture for the landscape in Clearwater, whereas some of these other things have potential to actually impact, like the cellular and broadband. So that's just my personal take on this. I'll vote against it.
Okay, that's fine. Mr. Johnson, go ahead. And I also know that some of that other work was actually done. But go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
So one of the challenges we had with this grant is it was set to expire. So Jenna did a ton of work with the folks administering the grant about trying to get an extension on the grant. And you'll see that the dates on this are pretty short. We have to have this project finished by July 31st. So we did a look at what can we do where we can do something, spend the money, but something what's still useful. We met with Tours and Wells Gray, and they really promoted this little map. They love it. They say there's a huge demand for it. It's going out. So, and they said they were going to run out. They want more. So it's an area where we thought, yeah, we could. That's a quick thing. We can order it. We can get it here. The signage as well. Jenna has already been working with them previously about signage. So it met the goal of trying to achieve it short order. The worst thing with grants is when if they don't agree to an amendment on what that grant will be, and then they don't extend the timelines, then you basically have to pay the money back. So we thought, let's find decent projects. There may be other projects. I'm not disagreeing with you that there's other projects where if you had an unlimited time frame where let's see if we can further these various areas along. There may be projects that would rise higher on the list, but when you add in the time constraint, we couldn't come up with any projects that made more sense than these ones.
Thank you.
Thank you. And a comment on actually the 3 points that you brought up there. A thought that just came to my brain because he keeps calls me every couple of months is Miles Bruns, who was remember Miles? Yes, Miles comes around. He is still working on the economic development arm. It used to be attached with Flinroe, and it was the RD at the Regional Economic Development. He has offered multiple times to over the years to come back to Clearwater and present to council the kind of things. He's much like a Work BC for economic development. Could talk us through what's available out there through the provincial government and the things that they offer. So I think maybe it's appropriate that we invite him to come talk to us because he basically knows who's who in the zoo and what's available out there at any particular time in history. So and he usually brings donuts. I'll tell him that he has to bring donuts. So but anyways, yes. So we do have the recommendations. What's the desire of council?
I'll move the recommendation because I'm really excited to have that sign about the Clearwater River Trail as a hard thing, and I really see it as a potential savings on that project. And we can wrap this up, and I do appreciate the amount of work, but I do hear everything that you're saying, Councillor Herring.
Yeah, so do I, especially on broadband cellular and the mill transition. Though that said, there was a lot of work done on the mill transition by other agencies. agencies. So.
I still see the savings of that Clearwater River Trail and how much that'll be of value to our citizens within Dutch Lake. So for me, I'm happy to move it.
Okay. Thanks, seconded by Councillor Frizzle. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Herring? And noted. Thank you. And then item 14, Councillor Sim, council engagement calendar.
Yeah, so I just, especially after the presentation that we heard, there are a lot of dates and a lot of time that's needed. And I'm hoping one of the things that could be sort of preloaded is doing a calendar of events so that we can get them, locked and loaded into the calendar, not only for council staff, but also for the community. Just looking ahead so that we can benchmark some of the things that we need to do. I'm finding that there's a lot of work that's being done on the staff level, and it's difficult to pause and set that time to say, okay, this is what we need to do and this is where we need council. And I'm also wondering if there's work that council can do in advance. So simple things like, we've only got 2 more meetings, I think maybe 3 meetings before UBCM, but if anybody is going to do any advocacy, that's got to be included in some of the agendas. So there are some benchmark things that we need to be looking at, and I'd like to have those times set aside. We've talked about advocacy, but that also has to be aligned to some of our strategic plans. Is there work that staff would like council to do outside of them, noting you can't meet without quorum, but how do we help? Because going into this summer, a lot of the new initiatives, all of those infrastructure projects, etc., it's big, but things have to be marked in so that staff or so that council can attend a lot of these engagement things as well. And everybody needs help planning. We're all juggling different responsibilities. So I'm just asking that we place hold and make those commitments, and we do it sooner than later so that time doesn't get lost.
Specific to UBCM, I believe that a few requests for ministers have gone forward to things that have been long-standing topics, public safety, highways, and that sort of thing. But I'll let Mr. Johnson talk to the rest of that. So,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So thank you, Councillor Sim, for your email today. It triggered some discussion among staff. I think it's a really great idea, having an events and engagement calendar that we put up onto our website, so it's easily accessible, and keep it live so that as we update when we're going to be talking to folks about various things, we update the calendar so people know, hey, we can go there, we can take a look. We know when there's OCP discussions, we know when there's discussions about other interesting topics, and keeping that in mind as well with what Chris was saying from True today about trying to combine some engagement, and we actually had really great success with that in the springtime when we had the one engagement session here. I think the number was, my estimate was between 50 and 60 people showed up, which was really great, and it was because it was a combined event where people could talk about a number of different issues, right? So really like that idea. We're going to take that away and work with it and see what we can come up with so that hopefully it's easy to navigate when you get onto our system, and maybe technological enough that people could click on it with their cell phone and it sends reminders or whatever, right? So we're going to have some discussions. If there's any significant budget implications to developing that, we'll bring that back. But I think the idea is really strong, and we need to do more work with it, because we're going to be doing more engagement in 2025 than probably we've done for years, right? So it's important that people know what's out there, what we want to talk to them about, because we can plan all the engagement we want, but if we don't get the participation, then it's really suboptimal, right?
And the same is said just for council, and making sure that this is when it's going to be brought forward to council, and so that it's everybody's prepared, they can place mark things. It just helps sort of streamline things a little easier. Even I'm just thinking today, I mean, we haven't heard anything about Canada Day. Typically, council's been involved with that. Is that an opportunity to do one of those bigger engagements? I don't know. But I think that there's the risk of being so busy, things just get lost. And I think that the purpose of this agenda item is to just say, can we pause, sit down with the year calendar, and just get it in and say, this is what it is.
So, and if I may,
yeah.
I think we're talking about there's a couple of different purposes here. What I talked about, the engagement and events, is really public focused. So
Yep.
it's outwards facing. With regards to events for council, that's something that I believe is already done periodically. Perhaps it needs to be updated. So, but I think that's already being done by the corporate services.
I think that there's work just to refresh that conversation and just to make sure that sometimes it's easy over time to just assume everybody remembers it's, the anniversary, and the anniversary comes and goes and you realize your spouse is ticked off. So I think it's just good to sometimes put things in calendars and remind.
Hope you're not talking from personal experience there.
Wayne's not listening. We're fine.
Cool. Thank you. So there's no direct ask from that, but it's a good conversation.
No,
at
it is
this
just a
point.
good conversation, and I think it also ties into something that we've talked about at the council table. I don't know, Councillor Bratton, if you wanted to address it, is just, our follow-up on things.
Yeah, can I go?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. That's why you're here.
Yeah, just to follow up with that is just information that comes to us and we're able to block it off, and when things are canceled, rescheduled, whatever, notice is great, and there's information from Dutch Lake I haven't got back yet and stuff like that. So so we can figure out where we're at with things that have been asked and need to be answered, and all of that kind of stuff follows through. And also council resolutions, they're hard to find in iCompass, and I just need help with that and how we go about that. I feel like I'm sort of lost. I don't know what
Yeah.
resolutions have been brought up. Have they been finalized? Do we still have some to work on? I feel like I'm kind of flailing.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a
I
good
don't know how to
question.
tie that down.
Yeah, iCompass is not always the easiest thing to search, but I'm sure there's an expert out there that we could probably tap.
Do we need to upgrade a subscription?
Don't know. I think it's more probably about how we input things and have inputted things in the past, but I wouldn't be the expert on that. That's generally how, if you don't put your keywords in the right places, and that's part of the inputting of topics. But an iCompass expert or something along those lines, somebody that's good at that would probably be useful to.
We used to have a document, and there was one for April, and it would be a tracking of resolutions.
Yeah.
Who was responsible, and then to me, the action would be, when does it come back to council, right? Like to complete the loop. And I think why I'd be keen on something like that is because it's a clear demonstration about the priorities of council. We can see, where our areas of focus have been, and it also helps form where we maybe want to go. So, where's the work at the table? How do we document it? How do we show it? And how do we make sure that we're looped back and we're completing on things?
Yeah, I'll leave that with staff. Cool. Thank you. That was a good conversation. We have one last item on the regular agenda, which is 19.1, letter to mayor and council from SD 73 DPAC. Information only. Any comments or questions on it? Councillor Herring?
I wonder if there's an opportunity to bring our MLA to a council meeting in the future, because it does feel like it really echoes with the healthcare issues and the cancer center issue. Like, I'd just love to get an update from our MLA on what's going on in the ledge right now.
My understanding is they've just finished their legislative session for the spring, so I can touch base with him and see when he would be willing to come to council, or staff can do that directly is probably more appropriate. That was fairly common in the past to see them at least once a year, and since he's new and excited, I'm quite sure he'd love to come and talk to us very loudly. So, yeah. Anything specifically on this letter?
Does anybody have any questions for it? It's certainly been a topic of conversation that's been bubbling up throughout the community, and there's been certain understandings about budgets, about how do you cut certain programs and it has to be reinstated. And I think very similar to what we went through with our municipal budget is that there is an increasing sense of costs. Unlike a school district, unlike a municipality, a school district can't charge their taxes.
You can't arbitrarily do inflationary increases, so yeah.
We are given an allowance of, let's say, $7, and if butter costs $7.85, we have to find 85 cents somewhere else. Yeah. And that's really what it comes down to. And the only areas of sort of discretion is that the school district is looking to work with the ministry about areas. Do you remember there was the extra 5 days after COVID that the government brought
Yeah.
in? So that is an example of everybody needed to be able to provide 5 extra sick days for their staff. But that was not funded at the school district level. So if somebody takes that, we need to pay for that staff member and we need to pay for their replacement, none of which comes out of the per student funding.
Double unfunded liability.
It's very difficult, and so these are the types of areas of how do we amend the system. But let me tell you, if there was a magic wand, I think that there's a lot of programs that people would want to put back into place. There's just a magic in education, and it's just a shame.
Yeah, to your point, locally we hear the stories related to SD 73, but I also note a few days ago on CBC News, I heard a story going on, and I'm going, oh, another thing that SD 73 had to cut? No, it was actually Merritt, which is a separate school district. So this is happening everywhere. This is not a localized problems. This is a lot of school districts across the province because they're all working on the same model.
They are, and they're all working on the same contracted arrangements, and sick days are a real concern when you look at many different school districts and the impact it has, and it trickles down into the classroom.
I think this will be the first time where there's probably going to be as much talk at UBCM about schools as there would be with the school trustees. So let's hope, yes. Okay, cool. Thank you for those comments. Comments from the public. Mr. Borrow, go ahead.
Just a question on the water meter thing. I'm glad to see that something's being done about it for water usage. Like I say, every time we try to do something water, we can never get water. Just a concern with the water meters, like why they're not put at the property line. Like I know there's a lot of properties that from the curb stop on, there's several connections off the main for sprinklers, for yard hydrants, then it goes to the house.
Yeah.
So we're not going to get real accurate information from the meters at the house. And they say it's going to help detect leaks.
Yeah, because there's also, I'll let Mr. Carmichael speak to that, but I think there's also the potential to put neighborhood meters in so that we can isolate sections, but
There's zone meters proposed, because if you don't have zone meters in
yeah, that's
Flats, Raft River, Sunshine Valley,
Yeah.
you're never going to know where your leaks are. So
That's in our 5-year plan, so I'm not sure if
yeah,
that's 26.
so it's part of a larger plan, but go ahead, Mr. Carmichael.
Yeah, so the intent was to ask for pit meters for more units, and then government said 10%. That's all they were allowing, so that was a requirement of the grant.
So do you think maybe you could rush this zone meters in? Like 5 years is a long time.
I would love to do it.
You're wasting all this water. It's going to
Yeah.
help development, because every time a developer shows up at the doorstep, we don't have water.
Yeah.
I think this is a critical maybe piece of infrastructure that should maybe be moved to the top of the list and get on that, because it's going to save you like cost of producing water, everything. Like
I think we're going to find a lot with especially the larger multi-connection properties. They will have curb stop water metering. We'll take trailer parks as a potential example where those people have their own systems. So, and some of those, I'm quite sure that we're going to find some savings there. But I absolutely 100% agree with you. If we had the money to do it, if there's a grant available, let's go with zone, or even just find a way to fund it. So yeah, I 100% agree. We need to actually do zone water meters as well. Okay. Any further comments from the public? Go ahead, Mr. Johnson. Or sorry, Mr. Borrell.
Beforehand, I think you need to come up because people are actually curious on what you might be saying, and we are online and they can't hear you. Sorry.
Sorry.
If we have to do it, you get to do it.
Okay, my last question is on the road condition assessment, the $54,000 budget for someone to come in and assess it. Did we not do one in like 2019 or something? There was one done and it was like a 40.
We've done a couple of them over the years. I think this is a different technology, but Mr. Carmichael can speak to that part of it. I know we had, when we did incorporation, we took over from a corporation, we had a complete study, but that was just a visual. and
There
I
was
don't.
one after that.
Yeah,
It wasn't too long ago, and it was like 40,000.
Yeah.
They came up with 18 or 20 million dollars we needed to fix our roads.
Yeah.
Are we just wasting $54,000 again because we don't have 20 million dollars to fix this?
I will let-
Should we
Yeah.
pick one or two areas and get a professional say this is what you need for $4,000 instead of 54?
We're looking for a lot more specific recommendations than they had in that last spend $1 million a year. That was kind of the recommendation out of that last report.
So what are you looking to get? Like what kind of information? Like fix this road or how to fix it or?
No, like which ones are base failure, which ones can be just overlaid, and try and combine that into our infrastructure study for which water lines and sewer lines need to be replaced, and come up with a solid, 5 to 10 year plan per project.
But is that something we even have money to do though? Like we know it's millions and millions and we don't have the money to do it. I'm just thinking if maybe you hired a guy to say, here, and I know which roads need top priority. Say, hey, for $5,000, come and give us a recommendation. Put that $50,000 into the repair. I just know we're not gonna be able to afford even one of the projects
Yeah.
per year, right? So is it just pouring money down the drain again?
I don't think, there's a couple of reasons why I don't think so. I'll let Mr. Johnson speak to this. But the big one is that with a formalized report, we can go after grants. We don't qualify them without that kind of level of detail. Same thing on water, same thing with everything else. But go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So with road repairs, there really is, roads have a life cycle. And if you catch the road at the right phase of the life cycle, it's the lowest overall cost to repair. So what I mean by that, if you let a road fail to the point that you have base failure, it's a really expensive road to fix. If you can pick up a road where it needs new paving, but the base is still in great shape, you can repair that road relatively cheaply and as a result do more roads. So the point of the road condition assessment is what roads particularly if they're done on a semi-regularly basis, and I don't know exactly what that preferred timeline is. If it's 5 years, I'm not sure about that, but you can lower your overall cost with roads by doing a regular look at roads and which ones are deteriorating the fastest. The other thing that we'll get out of this, and it'll be something that True ends up doing for us, is putting a bit more of the financial information behind it. So what are the consequences of failure? If you have a road that's a small subdivision road that serves a few people, the consequences are a lot lower for failure than a bigger road that's an arterial road, for example. So there's a consequence information, then there's the risk of failure. Some roads are high risk if they fail, it's traffic accidents, and some roads are low. So typically you want to spend your efforts on fixing the roads that are high risk, high consequence. Those are the ones where it makes sense to spend your money on those ones. With regards to, can we just pick out roads that are bad, do those? Yeah, I think we can. And I think a professional such as yourself, Mr. Borrow, who's looked at roads all the time, would probably be able to look at the list and say, yeah, some of these roads, those are your high priority ones. I think with these road condition assessments, so you get a bit more of an overall picture, and then you get to see every 5 years, are they maintaining? Or if you do an overlay, for example, on a road, which is kind of the lowest level of fix, is that maintaining itself? 5 years from now, is it still in good shape, or was that just a waste of money? So there's a lot of information coming out of these that is good incremental information to have.
Okay.
Thanks. Further comments from the public? Yep, come on.
Mayor and Council, Laurel Richmond.
Okay.
Love the map. I forgive it for cutting me.
Okay.
I just had one, what I understood was that the maps are already here or they're still coming?
No, I believe they're already here. You can acquire them at the Visitor Info Center.
Okay. So then my next comment is there's one trail in there that isn't quite accurate. And
That's fine. If you'd like to get that corrected,
well, I don't want these ones wasted.
Oh, God,
obviously,
that's not
right?
gonna happen.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but for the next print, if we could get that corrected.
Yeah, I bring it to the attention of the manager at the Visitor, or either Crystal Augustine or Claire Claire?
Hannah?
Claire Hanna.
Yeah.
She's actually has an office at the other end of this building, but even if you go to the YCS desk there and leave a message for her, they will get to her.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And then, and I guess I would also, if I'm asking for prioritization of the signage,
Yep.
that would go to her too.
The
or-
signage for the.
Just for that particular trail, because it's wrong on the map, and I don't want people wandering through my living room.
Oh. I think maybe you want to talk to staff about that too as well, because it might be a District of Clearwater sign versus a tour as well, Grace. I don't know. I don't want to publicly air where your property is, but yeah, it'd be worth doing that. So
Okay, thank you.
thank you. Thank you for your comments. Seeing nothing further, we are adjourned. Motion to adjourn, please. Moved and seconded. Bratton and Frizzle, thank you.